welcomes to our first ever poem solved.
Yes, welcome. Today we'll be going over the death theories of the great poet of the Gothic era, Edgar Allan Poe.
There are many theories that contribute to his mysterious death, although we are going to be focusing on what we find to have the most compelling evidence and trumps almost all other theories. Cooping. If you think about it, cooping was a high crime in the days of the great poet. In fact, it was all basically ran by the gangsters all the time.
Indeed, it was Tatiana. I mean, that was the time when people lived in the dark Gothic era, seeing death as beauty and wrote all about it in books and poems, especially Poe.
Well, I'm very excited to teach everyone all about this series, so why don't we jump right in?
Yes, ma'am. Why don't you introduce us to the beginning of everything that happened the day that he was found to the day he's died?
Let's do this. On election day, Edgar was found lying in the street close to a polling station. He was dressed differently than usual, wearing rural clothing and a straw hat. He was immediately taken to the nearest hospital. He was very confused. He remained like this until he died. He was found in a bad state of mind. Edgar was a passerby, and travelers like him were perfect for kidnapping and holding captive in a tiny room. In such places known as pens or coops, victims were filled with alcohol. Today I'm here with Joseph Walker, interviewing him about what happened on the day he found Edgar Allan Poe. Hi, Joseph. So, what were you doing the day you found Edgar Allan Poe?
It was election day and I was going out to the gun hall to vote. I wanted to be quick since it was raining and needed to catch up with finishing typing out.
And how was Edgar Allan Poe's condition when you found him?
He looked ill and he was lying in the gutter. He was delirious and he couldn't move. He needed a medical attention.
How did you help him?
I asked him if he had any acquaintances in Baltimore that might be able to help him. He told me to contact Joseph E. Snodgrass. He was a magazine editor and he has some medical training, so I made sure that I wrote a letter to him if he needed that.
It was nice meeting you today, Joseph.
We invited an expert historian to our studios yesterday and asked her what cooping was and what things were like back in their time. Now that we've gone over our own general information, we invited an expert historian to our studios yesterday and asked her what cooping was and what things were like back then in their time.
Indeed, we did. Indeed. Oh my God.
We'll just edit up our outro.
I know, just keep going. Indeed, we did. Let's show the interview clip now. Hello, Ms. Fink. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here, ladies. Now, I believe I'm here to speak to you all about cooping, if I'm correct.
You are correct. So can you begin by telling us what cooping is and how it works?
Okay. So, for summary of cooping is basically when a person like you or me gets kidnapped and held in a dark prison stay called coop. They would fill them up with alcohol and put them in different types of clothing. Then they would send them into voting booths and they would take them back to their coops and do it all over again, up to 7 times. After that, they didn't need them anymore, so they would ditch them in alleys and find other people to do it for them.
Now, how do you explain the state he was found in? Because we know he was in a delirious, drunken state. Also, he was found in a sort of, how do I say this, abused state? Almost like he was beaten that night as well.
Yes, well, I believe that Poe was beaten because people in the voting booths figured out who he was, so the people who led the cooping operations took him outside and beat him so he wouldn't speak of what happened to anyone.
What makes you believe the theory the most?
Being the historian that I am highly focused on details in the scene of that happened before and after the information that my team gathers. For example, we know that he was found outside of a tavern where everyone was voting in peasant clothing, almost full of alcohol. In ties with what the actual definition of cooping is, so it makes sense. I believe that other theories can make a little bit of sense, but the big picture, cooping ties in almost everything together.
I completely agree with you. Anyways, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me, and remember that all theories play into one.